Hello there, welcome to Genesis Models, welcome to another live session. Sorry for playing cameraman, but there you go. Welcome to another live session, the 33rd live session. If you remember last week, we were spraying up our A-4M. Tonight we're going to be basically going off into some bit more advanced sort of spraying, and hopefully we should get into some decaling. And I've got a nasty little bit of a decal here for us to sort out. This one just here, because it's on some really sort of nasty raised areas, so hopefully we'll sort that out. Just a quick sort of note, I have started up a new video series. It's called Tips and Tricks, and that is on the Genesis Models website, on YouTube, all those kind of places. Basically it's just going to be sort of like a new series where it's going to be quick, fast, boom, and it's just going to be showing you a quick tip in general modeling, which could be absolutely anything. Also, I like to put a little funny little clip at the beginning as well, so a bit of a laugh to start with, and then we'll do a tip and a trick. So watch out for them. The first one is already up on how to clean your models, and I'll have another one up next week. So here we are in the live session, and let's get down to our A4 here. So let's play cameraman again. Right, now let's do that. There we go. So here we go at A4M. So what we've got here is, I wanted to show you a bit of an advanced sort of spraying. With the advanced spraying, it's gonna, what we want to try and sort of represent, because we've already got pre-shading, we've got bleaching, we've got post-shading on here, and it's looking, you know, pretty sort of nice and weathered. But what I want to represent is basically, you know, some sort of an active aircraft, and when they're on the carrier decks, they go around and they kind of like do some sort of quick sort of spray cans, and they spray any sort of areas which are like chipped or scratches on it, and it's gone down to the bare metal. They do this basically because the aircraft carrier, you know, is out at sea, and you know, sea salt and everything really sort of gets rust going, so they quickly just go around and just, you know, use spray cans and spray them up, which makes it look sort of really sort of used and sort of dirty and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to represent that, but first off, what we need to do is, I'm just going to get out our original color first, our 71.121, which is light gull gray. Also feel free, get in on the chat if you've got any questions you want to ask, or want answered, or just want to say a quick shout out or a hello. Feel free to jump in there and I'll do my best to answer them. So just giving that a quick shake. As always, we want to get a little bit of thinners, like a 50-50 mix-ish. Alright, and I'm using good old homebrew thinners. If you want to check out that video, as always, on the Genesis Models website. We want to get out our original colour, right, and we want to come in with some black as well, but we don't want to be shy with the black. We do kind of want to make this look kind of dark and really sort of dirty as well. So let's mix that up and see what we have got. All right, so if you think, you know, we did the post shading and that was sort of like a darker version of our gull gray, right, but this time, you know, that's probably not going to be good enough. We want to go even darker. Now we don't have to worry about this because there is a second stage to this, so don't worry if it's like really dark and you're like, whoa, it's a bit going to be too intense. It is going to look too intense on the model, but there is a second stage to it, so that's looking quite good, pretty damn nice and dark. Now with this technique, you don't want to go overboard, you don't want to be blasting this stuff out absolutely anywhere and everywhere. So I'm just going to kitchen paper towel first, just to see how our airbrush is flowing. We're flowing quite good, and then I'm going to use this little spot just here because it's already quite sort of dark, and what I'm going to do is, just like post shading, I'm going to follow the panel lines. Right, now this here is I do believe it's an air brake, and because it's an air brake, it's going to be opening up quite a bit. And there you go, pretty damn intense and in your face. As I say, you want to maybe do it in maybe 2 or 3 places. So let's see, let's maybe do this little panel over here as well. Maybe the ground crew have been getting the panels off, and as I'm getting it off, they've basically made some scratches. So let's make this, oh, see, I know I've accidentally spidered a bit there, so I'm just going to quickly get out a cotton wool bud. Right, now I have already glossed this model ready for decaling, so I know, okay, I've made a mistake, and I can just literally just rub pretty much all this paint I've just sprayed down completely off, right? Because the paint I've just sprayed down is still wet, and I know that it's going on a glossy surface, so it wipes up pretty clear. There you go, little mistake has now gone. Right, so always good to have a gloss coat because it's just a nice sort of save. So I'm just trying to get my biting point, and I'm just making this sort of nice and dark. And there you go, pretty dark, pretty intense and in your face. Maybe one last bit just along here. I'll just do just a third one. Right, this technique does not want to be abused. As I say, I've just done these 3. That should be good enough. There we go. Right, intense in your face. So just a quick sort of colour change. Just going to pour this in the bin, out the way, and I'm going to do a quick colour change. There we go. So just getting out some homebrew airbrush cleaner. Again, also a video of this on the website. I'm getting a bit low, but hey ho. Let's move this model out the way because I don't want it to spit and gurgle up all over the model, because I want to keep you on camera at the same time. Slowly pull back, gurgling it while pinching the nozzle end. Alright, tip it upside down and clean it out, because if any dried up bits are in this colour cup end, we're actually bringing out the colour cup end with the kitchen paper towel, and we're not trying to blast it through that 0.4 mil nozzle. So whack some more in there, do another quick colour change. There we go, should be good enough. See if it's spraying out nice and clear. There we go. Right, now what we want to do is again come in with some thinners, right? And we want we don't need to worry about being transparent and everything like we've already discussed in the last episode with you know, making sure all your bleaching and post shading and everything's nice and transparent. What we want to do is actually get this to get down with some good coverage. So coming back with the original colour that we used to spray this model, which is 121 light gold grey. Right, we're going to pour this in here, and we're going to have, you know, something like a, I don't know, maybe something like 60-70% paint to thinners. Right, give it a good mix. Right, and what we've got here is a nice standard mixture here for just doing a base coat. Right, we're not going to add any colours or anything like that, because the whole idea is that you're basically sort of representing the ground crew coming around with a nice fresh spray can and doing some touch-up work. So, you know, the original colour is potentially perfect for this. Now, because the model has had so much like bleaching and pre-shading and post-shading, this colour is actually going to look different to the rest of the model, right, which is what's so cool about it. So taking this little bit here, what we're going to do is, you know, where we've just done that really darker colour, we're going to sort of spray right on top of that, Right, I mean, really, this is where we want to sort of get our biting point just right. This is where we want to get in really sort of close if we can, because we want to do a very sort of close, nice line. Right, and we want it to be sort of nice and strong, so you do want to be careful. And there we go, that is basically representing a nice bit of a spray can. Right, let's just do this one again. Remember your biting point, which is basically hold down the trigger, and just as you get paint coming out, there's your biting point, and you really want to be getting a nice straight line. Right, so coming in again, getting that nice, really fine straight line, sort of like the thinner the better. And just concentrate and spray that out. Nice airbrush control. If you see paint come out really quick like that, just stop, because you're probably gonna spider. So it's lucky I just stopped that. And you are getting in closer. Right, so making sure that your airbrush is sort of perfectly sort of, I don't know, tuned, shall we say. So you know, if you're a beginner, you do want to kind of make sure that you are all nice and your air pressures are just right, the thickness of the paint is just right. And hopefully, as you can see there, again, we've got that nice little bit of a spray, well, representing spray cans going. Maybe this black is just maybe coming out too much a bit here, so I'm just going to tackle this. That may be a bit too much, and I just want to knock that back. There we go. Nicely looking like a spray can. Now, was there another one? Yeah, there was another one just here. Now we are getting in quite close, so periodically just cleaning the end of your needle, just like so. There we go. And then we'll come back in, and again get that biting point and being careful. There we go. Do also remember, I mean, you don't want it to be perfectly square. There we go. So that was a bit too intense, maybe. I'm not 100% like that, so I'm just going to come in and just from a distance just spray a little bit around the area just to knock it back a bit, just feather it in. And there you go, that looks a little bit better. Potentially that there, you can just sort of see it's a little bit too dark there maybe, so we could do that again. Just come in with your airbrush and just feather it in, just a very light sort of spray over, and it'll feather that in a little bit from a bit of a distance. You don't have to worry too much because we are using our original colour here. We could sort of do it again, but maybe not in an area where we've made it really dark, but maybe just we've got this area here which we could just do that just as another little quickie, as you can see there. Also, this is kind of a good point to kind of go, oh, have I got any mistakes or areas I don't like? Because if you have, guess what, you can sort of do the same sort of thing. It doesn't look quite the same. It's got a little wonder if I can rub it away. Okay, I can't rub it away. A little bit of a mark just there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and we can just give this area a little bit of a spray. And it's okay because it just adds more flavour to it, different types of spraying, and makes it look all sort of just totally and utterly random and quite cool. Maybe a little bit of a mistake here, so hell, why not? Let's come in, tidy this little area up here. And again, it might just look a bit like the ground crews come along and just did a bit of a spray there, or it just looks like a nice little touch up. It all just adds to the flavour, just kind of different sort of colours and patterns and different ways of doing pre-shading, post-shading, and doing the spray can sort of look-alike technique. It just adds so much more to that. So hopefully you're liking the look of that, which then brings us to doing a little bit of decking. I'm just going to check if there's any comments. Well, then again, I'm not sure if my comments is working today. I'll just quickly reload my page. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Let's see if it starts working. Okay, I don't know if you guys haven't commented or my comments aren't coming up, but yeah, maybe one of you just do a quick comment, but I don't think it's working. Sorry about that. But anyway, let's move down to some decaling. So basic decaling here, what we're going to do is we're just going to whack in a nice piece along here. Now it's always good to sort of get out your decals and your thing just here and just sort of test and sort of look and see how things are being orientated. Maybe sort of orientate your model with the decal sheet just here so you can see where everything's going. We're going to do number 24 just here, and then oh, there you go, my comments are working. Just none of you decided to comment this time. Normally you're all going off going hello from this country and hello from that country, but tonight you haven't done that, which is why I thought it was a bit messed up. So decal number 24, nice and simply, we've got the number just here, and what we're going to do is you can use a blade and you can just nicely cut it out. You could use some nice sort of thin, not bulky scissors and cut them out that way as well. When you do this, always sort of be careful of what decals are around. I know some decal sheets I'm absolutely loaded with stuff, and then there's like see-through parts of the decal which you know, you could accidentally cut through a see-through part and not realize it, so just sort of be aware of that. Do you know what, let's do number 4 as well. Okay, because that's a nice pretty decal just here. Let's just cut you out. Right then, now with decals, what you want to do is get out some tweezers. Tweezers are always good so you're not actually touching them. There's a bit of water just off camera just here, and it's lukewarm. It's not cold, it's not boiling hot just from the kettle, it's just nice and lukewarm. The reason for this is if you kind of put decals in cold water and a lung decal like this, especially the thin lung decals, they can crack, and then you've got to sort of piece them together like a jigsaw puzzle on the model, which is a bit of a pain. Now with this, these are they are Hobby Boss decals, I think, which I have already done some decaling with these, and they do seem to be a bit sort of thin and a bit brittle, so be a good idea to be careful with them. But I have been using the Mr. Mark range, which is Mr. Mark softener and setter, two different types of decal solutions for a bit of a process. You use setter first, then you move on to softener. Right, so first off we need to wait for these to move freely. There you go, I've hardly touched that, and this one is nicely moving already, and this one, you don't want to be touching it and pushing it because you're going to rip it. Just let them slide off on their own. So first off, let's maybe bring you in a little bit closer for this Sorry for playing cameraman, there we go. And what we're going to do, I've also got this decal which I'll come to later. This one here, you've got all these little bumps on here, and because the decal's going on top of there, they're a bit of a pain, so we'll try and tackle them later. We may have to get the paintbrush out for that one, which is a bit of a pain, but still, here we go. Let's get the Mr. Mark setter. This stuff does sediment at the bottom, as you can see, this white creamy stuff, so do give it a good shake and make sure everything's sort of you know, nicely mixed in there. There we go, it's all off the surface now. Get this, and this is basically designed to get the process starting. So this is going to go along here, so I'm just going to paint right on here where this decal's going to go. Right, so this decal is now going to sit on top of that decaling solution. Right, and then what we're going to do, I'm just going to check my instruction, make sure I'm going to put, let's move this one out the way because I don't need you quite yet. Right, and then what we're going to do, place this on here. You could use your finger or anything that sort of nicely slides this off the decal sheet like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slowly move this. Now if you feel like this isn't moving very well, which it isn't, get a paintbrush and start painting on some extra water. Right, and hopefully we'll start moving, maybe sort of get underneath it, as you can see, with the paintbrush, just to get some of that moisture underneath, and hopefully we'll start moving. So I've also got, I've got a little hand drill here with a little sewing needle, and what I like to do is just very carefully, not stabbing it, but just touching it enough so we can move it and get this in the perfect position we want. Right, which isn't massively clear on the instructions where it goes, so I'm sort of guessing a bit, and I am live, so I can't really go off and check reference photos, but I'm going to sort of guess that we are sort of right up to the edge here. Right, so just take your time at this stage, make sure you are getting this in the perfect position, and you don't want any sort of creases as well, because this is a long decal. Right, you can get creases, so you might have to sort of pull it from the top to get the creases out from both ends, just to get these creases out. And you want to make sure it's pretty sort of straight. So going off and you looking at the stuff like recessed panel lines, because you know they're a good guide to sort of get your decal nice and straight and in a good position as well. So I am almost happy with this. Okay. Just gonna brush across it, try and get some. There's just a little crease on there. If I just brush along, I can sort of get them out. So that now is in the position that I want it in. So what I'm going to do is, we've got our Mr. Mark setter underneath, and now I'm going to brush some just on top. Right, the whole point of Mr. Mark setter is what it will do, it gives adhesiveness to the decal. So this decal, you know, the setter is basically going to act as a bit of a glue to glue it down. What it also does, it softens the decal up a little bit and starts the process of it softening up. And the whole point of decal softening up is so as they can shrink and crease into all the recessed panel lines, so as it looks like it is looks like it's been sprayed on, is the whole point. Now while that's sort of doing its stuff, you want to leave that just for a minute or two. May as well throw on the next decal. Checking any comments, no comments. And then let's get this one. Again, with these, you want to sort of look at your instructions and see, you know, where do we have any sort of indication of recessed panel lines for where these go. and it looks like it goes straight down the middle on this little recessed panel line just here, which I have just sprayed on, which, as a note, when it comes to putting decals down, you want to seal your model in a gloss coat, which I've already done before coming live, which is basically Pledge Floor Cleaner, or if you really want to go out and buy something that's branded, we've got Alclad's to Aqua Gloss, which is basically exactly the same stuff. And what this does, it seals in all your paint work, and it leaves a nice glossy smooth surface for your decals to go down, and go down a lot nicer, right? But here I've just sprayed, as I've just done this live, just sprayed on there, so hopefully we won't get any reactions with this, but you know, I do this for you guys, don't I? So should be okay, fingers crossed, or at least you can see how things go wrong. But there we go, we just slided that on after putting a bit of setter on, and then what you want to do is just line this up. Looking at your instructions, and it looks to be dead center down this recessed panel line, and it looks almost like, how far does this need to come down? Looks like his head is almost level with this raised bit just here, so about there. I think we're happy with that, that looks all right. So we're going to leave that on there and put on some more mark setter on top. There we go. So what we want to do now, this, the black one, has had, you know, time for the Mr. Setter to work in. So what we want to do is to really sort of get these decals to go down nicely, right? Get out a cotton wool bud, right? And what we're going to do, we're just going to roll the cotton wool. We're not going to drag it, we're going to roll the cotton wool bud. Oops, don't want to drag, don't want to drag. And we're going to roll it across this decal, which is basically what it's going to do is it's going to get any sort of moisture from underneath the decal. It's going to get any air bubbles that may have got trapped from underneath the decal, right? And it's sort of going to help it to conform a bit as well, right? Now I have just rolled it, as you can see, but after rolling it a little bit, you could probably start sort of dragging, but do be careful because these decals are a little bit on the brittle side. And there we go. Right, so once you've done that, you want to come in with the Mr. Mark softer, right, and we paint this right on top. Now this is the strongest stuff, right? This is what really sort of starts to soften the decal up, right? This stuff is what will potentially, you might see it wrinkle up, right? But any sort of recessed panel lines, recessed rivets, it's going to suck it down, suck it into those recessed panel lines, recessed rivets, and that's going to give you the more sort of sprayed on look, which is what we're sort of after. We want to leave that until it starts to look dry, and you know what, 2 or 3 coats of this stuff should hopefully do the job. Now these decals are does seem like 2 coats of it has done the job quite nicely, but try not to touch it at this stage. You don't want to be coming in and poking it or messing with it, right? Because this stuff, it really softens it to the point where it's almost kind of melting it. So if you come in and touch it, you could smudge it. So do be careful doing that. I'll just show you that again. We're going to take our little piece just here and we're going to roll across this one as well, so it basically really sort of sticks it down, gets out the air bubbles, gets out any moisture from underneath. Right, after rolling it, you could probably get away with dragging, but always be careful. There we go, and then come in with the Mr. Mark softer. paint that on, right, and leave that to do its magic. Right, now with this Mr. Mark softener, I have shall we say upgraded it in a sense, because when you buy this stuff out of straight off the shelf, you'll paint it on, and what will tend to happen is it will pool up into like beads of Mr. Mark softener, and that it does end up being quite bad for the model, because if you've got like a little bead in a certain area, that area is really going to get an intense amount of Mr. Mark softener, and it kind of almost leaves like watermarks, right? So what I've done to get rid of that is I've added I don't know, maybe 1/2 ml of flow improver to the mix. Now this is acrylic based flow improver by Winsor & Newton. I've had no problems with this one. I'm assuming you could probably get away with any kind of acrylic based flow improver, and what it basically does is does what it says on the tin. It will help the Mr. Mark softer to flow and give it an improved flow, so as it doesn't bead up, it will then flow. And hopefully, as you can see, we've got nothing beading up or anything like that on here. Hopefully, as you can see, it's just, it basically makes it a film, so it's not like beading up, it's just a nice film of this stuff, so it gives the whole decal an equal amount of softer. Right, so I'm just adding another coat to this, why not? There we go. So you want to do that for about 2 or 3 coats, and you should be somewhere looking pretty good. You'll see that the decal does go into the recessed panel lines, but it might need a little bit of help. So we've got this decal just here, which I've already done off camera, and hopefully you can sort of see that we got a recessed panel lines here, these little sort of almost like circle things going on. You can just see, hopefully on camera you can see it has recessed into these recessed panel lines, right? But you may want to help this kind of stuff along, so getting out a blade, not pressing down, but literally sort of just let the weight of the blade just lightly cut into it. So that was a recessed panel line, just cut it into that a little bit. These circle ones are a little bit more tricky, and you've got to be careful, because if you press too hard or something like that, you could end up like pulling up the decal or dragging it or something like that. So just be careful when going around sort of circles or stuff like that. Right. And what this will do is when we paint on top a bit more of our, what was it, Mr. Mark softer, it's going to be able to get into the deck, because we've cut. It's not going to just be able to sort of sit on top and do the magic. It's actually going to now be able to get underneath the decal, where it's going to really sort of be able to work a lot better, and it's going to be targeted perfectly on our recessed panel lines, right? But what we've also got is these raised bumps just here, and they, as you can see, you can sort of see there's all sorts of bumpiness going on here, and sort of almost like looks like bubbles and stuff. So we need to sort of tackle that. Now what we can do, now you want to make sure it's dry before you do this, and we might end up tearing the decal a bit, and we might have to do some painting afterwards. But let's put on some more setter just on here, right? But what we're going to do is, these brushes are quite cool because they're quite sort of hard bristles on the end. So where we've got our recessed panel lines that we've just cut, we can actually dab down on them, and it'll help the decal go more and more into our recessed panel lines, right? But what we could also do is, where we've got these raised areas that are looking a bit sort of bobbly and bubbly, we can sort of press down on these as well, just nice and lightly at first, because we don't want to tear them. But hopefully that's going to be enough to soften the decal up and sort of almost stretch it in and around these raised areas, and it looks like it is making an improvement. And I'm just lightly dabbing on these, and it does seem to be nicely working. Ooh, that is quite nice actually. That has worked rather well, better than I actually expected. I don't know how well you could see that, but those bubbles have sort of nicely gone off of there. Right then, so what we want to do, we want to sort of leave that to dry for a bit and leave these to dry. We don't want to you don't want to keep coming back with a Mr. Mark softener while, say, it's still wet. I don't know how well you can see that on camera, but this black one has wrinkled up. There you go, you might be able to see that. It's wrinkled up a hell of a lot. When it does that, you really want to leave it alone. Don't come in and whack another coat on top of that while it's wrinkling up that bad, because you just make it wrinkle more and more and more, and you can sort of fold the creases and it can make a bit of a mess. So just let that dry nicely. But this top one here hasn't got any creases in it. It's looking dry-ish, so we'll give that one another coat. And it's just all about just keep giving a coat and a coat and a coat until you really start to see the decal sink into those recessed panel lines, and that should be quite good. So we need to let that dry for a bit, so I'm going to check any questions or anything. Got a little question here by Desert Eagle 10 about decaling solutions. Is there any basically, are any decaling solutions better than others? Now this one is a sort of a hit and miss kind of thing going on here. Yes, you've used Microsolid Set, which is a highly recommended set of decaling solutions actually, which are just here. But when it comes to decaling, the problem is there's so many different types of decals out there from loads of different manufacturers, and different decal films react differently. You know, it's not like a set in stone kind of thing. For instance, was it the Cartograph decals? They're a company in Italy. They do some of the best decals in the world, and Microsolid Set are perfect for those decals. Microsolid Set works a lot in other decals, but it really just depends what you come across. When it comes to decaling, always have a load of different sort of decaling solutions. Pretty much most of the time Microsolid Set will be fine, but I do find that when it comes to stuff like sort of like China and Taiwan or Japan, those kind of manufacturers out there, they do their own decals, and they tend to work better with stuff like Mr. Mark Setter and Mr. Mark Softer, and these are actually from over there as well, so they kind of work well with them, whereas sort of like European and US tend to work good with decals, tend to work good with Microsolid Set, which strangely enough Microsolid Set is from the US, so it's almost like a kind of a regional thing in a sense. But still, it really is kind of like you might want to sort of put a decal on and test it with Microsolid Set first, because they seem to be a safer bet. If you find the decal's not really wrinkling, not really conforming to the model, I do find that Mr. Mark Setter and Softer are a stronger solution, and they can handle like maybe the sort of bigger, more stubborn, thicker decals. And then you know, sometimes you can get away with using stuff like IPA, or I know some people have used X20A to soften their decals, and that stuff's worked. You've also got loads of different manufacturers out there. It is a bit of a minefield to kind of find the right decaling solution, but as I say, it really depends on what decals you get. There is a last resort as well. Go on, I may as well sort of show you. Where is it? This stuff, Tamiya's thin cement, is your last resort. If this doesn't work, the decals are absolutely rubbish. Basically, this stuff is, you know, what it does, it melts plastic to glue our models, right? So when it comes to decals, it absolutely disintegrates them. So if you've really got a horrible stubborn decal that is really thick and no solution seems to be like softening it and it's not sinking into recesses, or maybe you've just got a really stubborn area. I mean, this is quite stubborn, but I've found that our Mr. Mark Softer has really done well on here. But if you really had a stubborn area, what we can do is you get out the Tamiya's thin cement, right? Really sort of get that rid of that. Really sort of get rid of most of it off the end of the brush, and then you really just want to come along and just touch that area that's really sort of stubborn. Don't touch it again. If we come along and start kind of brushing it on and brushing and brushing, it will start smudging. It'll basically turn the decal into paint and it'll go all horrible and everything. Just touch it once and leave it alone. Don't mess with it anymore, whether it's done the job or not. Just leave that to dry. Once it's dried, maybe you could come in with a second application, but mega careful with this stuff. So if you ever have those major problems, Tamiya's thin cement is going to do the job for you. Right, so let's take a look at this now. Now this black one, I don't know where you can see it, but still looking a little bit wrinkly, so I'm going to leave that one. That one seems to have really sort of reacted, so I'm going to leave that to dry a little bit more. But this one here does seem to be doing all right, but I'm not going to come along and sort of cut into the recess panel lines just yet. I did sort of forget to mention that you really want to make sure the decal dries before you start cutting into it, because if it's just sort of had the Mr. Mark Softer on there and it kind of looks dry, you can cut into it and it starts to tear. You do want to kind of maybe, you know, after putting softer on, just leave for half an hour and then cut into it and add some more softener as well, just to be clear on that one. What we also got here is, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've accidentally sort of caught it, and you can sort of see there's a little mark just there where it's just, I've caught the decal, it's ripped off, and just there I think that's where it's sort of split a little bit and it's showing the paint underneath. In situations like this, it's a bit of a pain, but basically what I do is I go off and I find as close a matching color paint as possible. I might just quickly try here. This might do it. Here we go. We've got Blue Angels just here. Looks like a pretty sort of closest match. I'll probably spend more time trying to find a close match as possible, but I want to show you guys, and it is live, so it might not be the best, but trying to find a closest match color as possible, and then a half decent paintbrush. Right, we want to get a bit of a palette going if we can. I should probably clean my palettes off. But what we're going to do, again, some simple water. We want to sort of thin this down. We want this to be nice and transparent, right? Because even if you find the closest matching color as possible, it still might not be 100% the closest match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it nice and thin and transparent, which hopefully you can see that's looking fairly transparent, right? And yes, this might take about, you know, 3, 4, 5 coats, but because it's nice and transparent, it will feather in, and hopefully, you know, will sort of blend in with the decal. And I do kind of try and make it look like a highlight. I haven't just come along and just dabbed at the spot and just done the spot. I've kind of sort of trying to turn it into a highlight, sort of following this star up and down across it. So if it is a slightly off color, not quite 100%, which actually it's looking pretty damn good actually, at least you can make it look like a highlight, like I've sort of done just there. Right. And then what I'll do is, it might look a little bit off at first, but when it comes to right at the end, we can come along and do another stage of post shading on top of the decal and actually blend in this little bit of a mistake. So don't worry if you've kind of like, I don't know, nicked your decal, or it's kind of ripped a little bit or something like that. You can come in and very carefully like paint these things. But as I say, I mean, you probably, because you want it nice and thin so it goes on feathered rather than sharp, right, you might be doing about 4 or 5 coats, but hopefully you can sort of see that little mark there's going, this one's going there. You've got a nice close matching colour, so it's not so noticeable, but as I say, at the end stage, bit of post shading at the end just to sort of feather that in a little bit, and it should be actually rather nice. Right, so pretty much we've covered most things with Decaling there, as well as that nasty little hard bit there. The only other thing is just remember to, once you've finished Decaling, right, let's just presume that, well, this one is finished, but it's not 100% dry. So you finish your, let's just say you finish your Decaling and you've left it to dry at least. I mean, really you want to sort of leave your decals to dry overnight to make sure they dry properly and cure and everything. But what you're going to want to do is get out a kitchen paper towel, make them a little bit moist, and you want to clean them. Right, so here we have a decal that's basically finished, and what we'll do, I'm going to do this very carefully because it isn't like dry, but just for you guys on camera, I just rub around it and clean it with a moist kitchen paper towel. Water's just fine, and what this will do is it will remove any sort of excess dried decaling solution around the actual decal, because what these decaling solutions can do is they can leave a residue which can sort of sometimes hinder putting a gloss coat on top. It can hinder your weathering, and it can mess a lot of things up like that. So you want to make sure it's sort of nice and clean. Once it's nice and clean, you can then throw on about 2 or 3 coats of a gloss coat, just like we did after the painting. We spray the model, we seal it in with a gloss coat so as our decals can sit on a nice gloss coat. We then seal it in again with another gloss coat so as it seals the decals in also, so our decals are nicely sandwiched between 2 gloss coats, which really sort of saves your work. It really sort of protects the decals. It really sort of makes your decals stick on and stay down, and it just means when we come around to do any sort of weathering, we haven't got to worry about any kind of weathering products reacting with decals or making funny stuff, because I know in the past, if I've done it where I've got a decal on, I'll come along, I'll do some weathering, and somehow the weathering solution has got in and underneath the decal, and it's made some horrible mess of the decal. It's sort of got underneath the see-through parts, and you end up sort of making the see-through parts come to the foreground. It looks an absolute mess. So always good to seal in your decals afterwards. So I think we are coming up to actually finishing tonight. Just checking any questions on here. Nothing at the moment. So yeah, sadly I think we have come to the end. Next week I should hopefully have this all decaled up. It's all sprayed. I would say we're probably going to be jumping into some weathering stages, which should be kind of cool. I'm not sure what kind of weathering I'm going to do on this, but we'll get it all nicely weathered up next week and sort of show you the ins and outs of that. And this is the part that I personally do love, is actually doing the decaling, because it's just, I don't know, it's just one of these things where, you know, the spray job's done, the decals go down, it really starts to look the part. You know, it's sort of lets you see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, when you get your decals down. So it is one of my favorite parts, which I know actually a lot of people kind of don't like decaling, but I'm one of these people who I just find it therapeutic just to slowly just work through it and put the decals down and whatnot. But that's just me personally. But anyway, sadly we have come to the end, so hopefully you'll be around next week to watch the weathering stage of our A-4M that we've just been working on. If you wasn't here at the beginning, you know, we've started a whole new series up, and hopefully you're going to check it out. It's tips and tricks, where it's just nice, quick, fast, show you a quick tip to do modeling. I'm hoping to put a little bit of a funny thing or something at the start, just to you know, sort of liven things up a little bit. Other than that, you know, we've got FA18 going on, we've got the USS Enterprise E going on, we've got Tempest moving along, inbox reviews going on. Go to Genesis Models website, genesismodels.co.uk, and there you'll find, you know, loads and loads of videos. I know there is like a sort of like a backstage thing where you can subscribe and you can see loads more footage, but there is a whole bunch of free stuff there as well. Don't forget the forum. The forum's just full of absolutely, you know, fantastic guys who are doing their own builds, throwing up their sort of like a photo build kind of thing, where they kind of post on the thread and everything. Absolutely fantastic stuff there, showing off final reveals. We've got group builds going on, which I do believe is just build anything you want, so it's kind of a very broad group build that's going on for right now at Genesis Models, so check that out. There are prizes at the end of it, which is also rather cool. But apart from that, sadly we have come to the end of our live session, so I'll catch you next week at 6 o'clock at the usual time on Friday, where we'll be doing some weathering on our A-4M. So until next time, my name is Bob Waldron, this is Genesis Models, and I'll catch you next time.